Well, good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here today.
We appreciate your presence. How
Oh, Danny boy.
come there's two title slides?
Because one doesn't say chapter 2 on there.
I guess. Did I do that?
No, I think that's something that I did.
Okay.
But like, I did it for chapter 1, and I had chapter 1 on there, and you must have changed it to chapter 2, so I don't know how I got two title slides.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Why are there two of those? Okay, whoops. I don't remember doing two title slides. Okay, it'll be all
Well,
right.
and maybe here's my thought. I think it's
Oh,
one of
no.
those fancy things that if you go to the next slide, it shows up, you know? So
Yeah.
like in our presenter view, it shows it as the next slide. When it's not technically two slides, it's just one, but it has a fancy little cummy
Oh.
thingy in. Yeah.
Did I do one on? Okay.
No, I did that, and so
Oh,
when
you
you went
did-
back in, and
Oh.
it's different because I
Are
don't
there
know if
any
I-
other surprises in there?
Well, hopefully, hopefully no. Well, hopefully, yeah. anyways.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully no heretical ones. just maybe minor technical difficulty. But
Okay. So I see. I'm missed 1 week, and looks like everything went okay.
I hope. I don't know. You know.
All right. Well. Okay. Well, thank you for covering last week, and again, I know I've given updates and everything, but I did on last Wednesday night. I was on the way home from Texas, having spent the week with Paul, and I really got to spend the last he had the last couple of good days while I was there, and so I'm very thankful for that, and I kind of got timed that visit very well, I think, and then there you go. The end came quick after it started coming. So, so thank you for covering that. We made it all the way through Daniel 1, and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
noticed every time I'm not here, you cover a lot of ground. So I tend to bog us down, I think, maybe by talking like this. So let's jump right into Daniel chapter 2. Anything to wrap up from Daniel chapter 1?
Not.
I don't think so. I think Daniel chapter 2. I can't get situated here. It feels weird putting the Bible over there and notes closer, but I need to be able to see the notes. So we'll switch places if we need to with them here in a minute. All right. So Daniel chapter 2. So you want to read?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
And we are going to take the first chunk is a big chunk, 1 through 13 to start with, and then we'll start taking some smaller little pieces, I think.
All right, now in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. Then the king gave orders to call the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. The king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to understand the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell the dream to your servants, and we will declare to you the interpretation. The king replied to the Chaldeans, the command from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be made a rubbish heap. But if you declare the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts and a reward and great honor. Therefore declare to me the dream and its interpretation. They answered a second time and said, Let the king tell the dream to his servants, and we will declare the interpretation. The king replied, I know for certain that you are bargaining for time, inasmuch as you have seen that the command from me is firm, that if you do not make the dream known to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed together to speak lying and corrupt words before me until the situation is changed. Therefore tell me the dream, that I may know that you can declare to me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who could declare this matter, the matter for the king, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. Moreover, the thing which the king commands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except God's, and whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. Because of this, the king became indignant and very furious and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they looked for Daniel and his friends to kill them.
Okay, lots takes place, but it is a kind of a self-contained story there, so we took all that at once. Interestingly, chapter 2 follows right on the heels of chapter 1, and time, maybe the most profound thing I say all night. You know, can't get one past any of you guys. But this one, you know, chapter 2 follows, it says, it gives us kind of a specific time frame. Now, see, here's where I need to have my Bible open to that passage, because it's hard to go back on the slides. But it tells us when this happens. So when does it happen?
After chapter 1, but...
When are the events of
In
chapter 2 taking place?
in the second year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay, where is Daniel? There it is. Lamentations,
Jeremiah,
Ezekiel, Daniel. Okay, I got to say them in my head, and I can't think while I'm talking.
But chapter 1 does end with this, I wouldn't say prophetic, well, not prophetic statement, but the historical fact. Obviously, that's a little bit out of place if you go chapter 1, chapter 2. The historical fact is Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus, which he'll show up in chapter 6. At the end of chapter 5, things will go. So, you know, chapter 1 and chapter 2, the timing of it, I guess I'll let you hand that over, but there is a little bit of like, well, we're not going all the way to the first year of King Cyrus, but that's just an anecdote saying, well, Daniel has served faithfully all the way through the kingship, if you will, of King Nebuchadnezzar. So chapter 2 comes in there with, okay, focusing back in with an actual date.
Right. So if you'll think back to kind of the timeline of things that we did the first week in the introduction, Nebuchadnezzar is leading his father's army as he has Jerusalem surrounded, right? And then finds out that his father dies. So he has to basically finish his little campaign and run back and be crowned king, and then go back and takes a bunch of people captive. So it happens very quickly that, you know, some things unfold right there. So the first year of King's, what we would think of as the beginning of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign as king, starts at the same time that Daniel and his friends get taken into captivity. So how long did chapter 2 say that they were, or chapter 1, sorry, were they in this little apprenticeship program that they're in? 3 years. But where are we at in King Nebuchadnezzar's reign in chapter 2? Second year. So if they're still in the apprenticeship program, are they really wise men yet? So there's a little bit, some people have raised concern about the timing of things in chapters, between chapters 1 and chapter 2. And there's issues about how Jewish people counted time versus how Babylonian people counted time. Babylonian people wouldn't have counted the partial year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign as his first year, but Jewish people would have said that was his first year. So depending on how we're counting it as you know, Jewish time or Babylonian time, there's possibility of some overlap there. So it could be that they are just newly, like this may be the first thing that happens after they finish their apprenticeship program. And so even though by one counting of time they're in their third year, by the Babylonian counting of time they're in their second year. So it's okay to kind of look at those and scratch our head a little bit and think we may have to reconcile things a little bit, but it works.
Could there be a possibility that they're done with their deal and he's made that decision that everyone's going to be, you know, taken care of, they're going to be, you know, killed, and maybe they're thinking, you know, hey, maybe we need to speak up and see if there's something we can do to save
I think that's
With
one
the wise
possibility.
training, yeah.
It was, and it's possible, you know, why did they have to go find Daniel and his friends? Because when he called all the wise men forth, you know, Daniel and his friends weren't part of that group that came out as part of the, you know, we've got all the wise men here. Well, these guys aren't quite qualified yet to be called that. So, but now, since they're in the apprenticeship program, basically, and they're being trained by all these wise men that we have decided need to die because they lie to us and they tell us what we want to hear, they've been teaching Daniel and his friends that, along with all the other apprentices, so we're just going to wipe them out too, and we're going to start over. So there's lots of little different twists and turns that we could do there to kind of make this work and make it fit, and it's okay. But I don't, and it may be that, you know, people read over that and they don't even notice it, but if you've ever thought there was a timing issue there, it doesn't have to be a timing issue unless I just created one for you. So, but there you go. So what is it that the king asks of his wise men and all these folks to do?
Not just interpret the dream, but
Right.
tell me what the dream was.
Have you ever had a dream and woke up knowing you had a dream, but you couldn't remember what the dream was? Or does that just happen to me? I know I had a weird dream last night, but I don't remember anything about it. I just remember it was really weird or something like that. Yeah, does that ever happen? Well, yeah. And
I don't remember half of it.
Yeah. And I think that may be the kind of thing that happened with Nebuchadnezzar here, where he woke up and he knew something really important happened, but he can't grasp, he can't quite remember the details. It's hazy, it's foggy, or maybe he remembers it clearly, but he knows it's so important that he has to get this interpretation right. So obviously this dream is from what source? I mean, we know the end of the story, right? Where did this dream come from? This dream came from God. Even though Nebuchadnezzar is a pagan god, or a pagan king, and follows pagan gods, the true God sent him a dream, and whatever qualities this dream possessed made Nebuchadnezzar know this was an important thing that happened, and we've got to get this right. And so he gives what seems to be an impossible task to these people. And if you look at commentators and what they say, the magician, he brings in several classes of people. It's not just like, here's my advisors. This would be like his cabinet, and like a president has a cabinet, and each cabinet member has their own specific role to fill presumably based on their qualities and characteristics and expertise. He calls in, magicians and conjurers, sorcerers and Chaldeans. And so each of these kind of have their own category. Stuff fell off the pulpit right there. The magicians would have used like magic words and strange actions and hand motions and things like that to influence people or the outcome of situations. The magicians had some crude knowledge of the laws of nature, which would help them to manipulate their surroundings or manipulate things around them so that they could appear to be doing things that they were doing by natural means, but because they were doing things in a way that people didn't understand what they were doing, they could make it appear as though they had some power. Enchanters were typically people that were able to influence others by charms or by special objects or things that they could use to enamor people or something like that. They demonstrated their powers through means of charming snakes or other animals or things like that. Sorcerers had a practice of consulting the mysterious, whether animal, human, or divine, in order to determine the future course of action. So they were like fortune tellers, those kind of things. And then the Chaldeans would have been like kind of their holy class of people, like we would have considered the Levitical priesthood to be the priests of the Jewish people. The Chaldeans would have been their religious leaders. So they were the ones that would have consulted astronomy and astrology and those kind of things, which were, they believed, governed by their false gods. So they have these people in, and he gives them which is essentially is an impossible task. Tell me what my dream was. If you can tell me what my dream was, I'll know that you're legit, right? You can impress me by telling me what the dream means by first telling me what the dream was. And if you can't tell me what the dream was, why would I believe you when you tell me what the dream means? I mean, it's an impossible task for anyone of earthly talents. It's only a possible task if you have divine talents. And so these guys are all claiming to have some kind of supernatural talent, some kind of supernatural ability. And so it shouldn't be an impossible task. But it is an impossible task because none of them have these powers. And then the penalty is, if you can't do it, your life is forfeit. That's a motivator. Putting your life on the line is a motivating thing. Chuck? He's on to him, right? You guys are really good at telling me what you think I want to hear. And in this case, it's not what I want to hear. I need to hear the meaning of this dream. I need this to be right. The text is unclear if the punishment was being carried out individually or Corporately, were they gathering all the wise men together? Many commentators believe it was like, we're going to gather them all together, we're going to get them all in the public square, and we're going to have one mass beheading. We're just going to lop all their heads off at once. Or were we just going house to house and saying, yep, you and you and you come right now, and we're going to take you out back and do it. It could, based on the way it's worded in the text, it could go either way. So commentators are kind of split on what they think is going on there.
Well, the reason why I put, I think the two of them on there, the 2 bullet points that I kind of added, I don't know if you could tell this, when Jason does, he likes, good, I just kind of throw stuff up there. But, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, I think there was one guy that in the notes said he might have forgotten, and he wants them to tell him what his dream was so that he can, or whatever. But I think, as we've been talking about, it was a test. I think good old King Nebuchadnezzar is a smart fella. I mean, he's a smart dude. He was,
right.
If I tell you the dream, you're just going to lie to me, tell me whatever. And, it's like, you think about Joseph and some of the dreams there. It's like, Pharaoh, your dream is 7 years into the future. It's like, well, if I have to wait 7 years to see if you were correct, well, then I got 14 years of life, and until I'm going to kill you and say your interpretation was incorrect, and obviously Joseph had a divine interpretation of that there. But with these people, oh yeah, your dream means that you'll be happy for the rest of your days, and that whatever. He was testing them to say, hey, you're scammers if you can't even tell me what was going on there. And that last point that I made was, last bullet point that I added, was the text is unclear if this was an individual or a corporate kind of a deal, because as they went to find Daniel, as the story progresses, it's not unheard of or unspeakable. Again, it's not said in the text, but that they could have been taking people and immediately killing them, and Daniel and his friends were, they're 28th on the list, and there's been 20 people already killed before him, and they're in the process of killing other people when Daniel and his friends are being sought out. And so, there's, again, it's not stated specifically in the text, or they could have just been gathering them all together to make a public demonstration. But needless to say, I mean, there's a lot more going on in this situation, and you'll look at Daniel's response, and I love the thing that Jason put on the slide was like, Daniel's calm, collected attitude toward what was going on shows great faith. And it's like, we'll read here in just a second. Daniel's reply to this is, you're about to behead me and my buddies, and my reply is, oh, what's the great haste? Anyways, we'll continue on.
And one final thought there, the king too. Think of how these people are all described, the different classes of people that he has before him. They're all charlatans. They're all manipulators. That's how they got to their position in the first place. Now they may have been really smart. They may have had knowledge of natural things. They may have been great mathematicians, or they may have been great at making an argument or formulating a plan or whatever it was. But in the end, when it comes to what the king recognizes, he says, I'm on to you. You have all agreed to make up a story and buy time until you can figure out what's going on. So they're all in this together. They're all agreed, and the king has figured out that they have agreed. We're just going to assuage his curiosity until we can figure out what to say that will make sense. And so the king is, he's not having it. And so that's why it seems like a harsh penalty. But if I was the king and I found out all my trusted advisors were manipulating me, I'd be pretty upset too. I don't know that I'd kill them all, but that's what Nebuchadnezzar decided to do. And you can understand his anger at what they're doing. So continuing on, verses 14 through 18.
Then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguards, who had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He said to Arioch, the king's commander, for what reason is the decree of the king so urgent? Then Arioch informed Daniel about the matter. So Daniel went in and requested of the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter, so that they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
All right, and you're right, Daniel, this is, go ahead.
Daniel gets the word that they're all going to be killed, and he only, I don't think he even knew why. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
we're going to be killed. What's going on?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, yeah, tell me again why you're dragging us out of here in the middle of the night or whatever it was. And I think you're exactly right. I think Daniel seems he seems curious and unperturbed. I think I would say it's a calm response. He told me that you guys got to come with me. Don't bother packing. Don't bother grabbing your belongings or getting anything that you think you might need, because you're not going to need any of it. We're going to your death. I think I would have I don't think I would be this calm. Daniel's calm response in the face of certain death is a remarkable show of faith. He's, think of what he's been through in the last couple of years already, as he's seen the armies of Babylon march against Jerusalem, and he's seen people taken captive, and he's seen battles. He saw the Egyptian army destroyed. He's heard of the Assyrian army being destroyed. All of these things have been going on, and he is now in the hands of the people who have wrought all that destruction. And they say they're going to kill me. Oh, okay. Well, can we have a minute? Can we pause for just a second and talk about it? And he has a very calm response in the face of that certain death. And then his response to it, or his request, is not give us a minute, to get our affairs in order. Give us a minute to try to find a way to convince you not to do this. It's give us a minute to consult with God. Give us a minute to pray. Give us some time to see if our God will deliver us, which tells me that he knows God has the power to deliver him. I think there's some foreshadowing of some things for future events here. Remember what later on what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are going to say in face of the fiery furnace. God can deliver us. We know he can because he's done it before. I mean, they're living through this right now. They lived through the Babylonian army being camped on their doorstep and surviving that. They got taken into captivity. God preserved them. They lived through being told, if you don't eat this stuff, we're gonna take you out and kill you. And they lived through that. And they lived through all the wise men are going to be put to death. They lived through all that because of God's preserving. So later on, when they make that statement, it's not just a whimsical statement. It's a statement based upon the faith born of the fact that God has continually delivered them already in the past. Don?
Something we need to remember too, these guys are being trained to be statesmen, okay? Daniel and the rest of them.
Yes.
And the way he treats the commander, he treats him with respect.
Mm-hmm.
He talks to him, and then the next thing you know, he's able to go before the king. He doesn't take him off somewhere. He allows him to go talk to the king.
Yeah.
So with that being said, he handles that situation also with the king with uttermost respect. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I was going to say, you see God's providence here by allowing him time, by giving the king, by giving Daniel favor with the king, to get some time.
Yeah. It makes me wonder too how I always find myself wishing we had more details to go into and to think about. And as we are really good at, we speculate a lot, right? But I wonder if the way that Daniel and his three friends have conducted themselves during their period of apprenticeship, I keep calling it, but during their period of education over the previous 3 years, I wonder if their conduct during that time affects Arioch's decision to let them have this time to go and consult with their God. The fact that he knows the story of how they were blessed when they stood up for their beliefs early on, and not just the fact that they stood up for him, but the way they did it with respect and with grace. And then are there other events that happened that we don't have recorded, that where Daniel and his three friends demonstrated a level of character that says to Arioch, this is a good idea. I'm going to be rewarded for allowing this to happen because putting my faith in Daniel is a good idea.
The same thing happens when he goes before the king. that, he asked for time. I don't know that he would have given the other wise men time. He thought all of their tactics were delay tactics anyway.
Right.
But he respected Daniel enough to let him have some time.
Yeah, and that's a good contrast between, the way the other wise men handle the situation versus the way Daniel does. In fact, I mean, even the contrast of the wise men say, where was it? The Chaldeans, go ahead, in verse 10, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except gods, little g, their gods that they serve, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh. They have no faith in their gods. They're not going to their gods to ask their gods to tell them what the king's dreams were. If somebody's going to divulge the information to you, it's got to be one of the gods. We're not going to go to the gods and ask because we don't have any faith that they're going to tell us. But what does Daniel do? He says, can I have time to consult with my God to see if he will inform us of what your dream is? And so Daniel goes to his God in faith while the Chaldeans have no faith in their gods whatsoever. Don? Oh, there you go. Great minds. And us. Think alike. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like and that fits in with this last day. I don't even know if we read this, but Daniel and his friends show themselves to be dependent on prayer. That's the first thing that Daniel thinks of once he has a handle on what the situation is. He doesn't, he knows exactly what he needs to do. We need to go consult with God. We need to pray. And then they do so with an expectation that God will deliver them, versus the way the Chaldeans respond, which is, we have no faith that our gods will deliver us from this. What you ask is too hard. And so that's a tremendous contrast there between the two positions.
Well, I think, again, it's showing, this expectation, it's great to see up there, but I think it's a huge deal because Daniel has said to the king, I can do what you ask. Give me a time and I'll show up knowing what you need me to do. Knowing full well that he himself has no ability, has no power, has no idea what the dream was or the interpretation of it, and that he is fully relying in that moment on going to God in prayer and God giving him the knowledge, God giving him the things that he needs to withstand the situation. Yeah. Before he even prays the prayer, before he's even given the knowledge, before anything is going on, Daniel is saying, I'm going to be there and I'm going to know what's going on. Why? Because I believe in a God that can move, can do stuff.
Yeah. So in verse 16, Daniel requested of the king for time so that he can declare the interpretation. That's right. I mean, Daniel has full expectation that he will be able to do it. He just needs God to deliver it first.
He didn't ask the king to tell him what happened.
Yeah.
In his dream.
Yeah.
And that's what the other guys did. Though.
Right.
They said they not only asked, they almost demanded.
Almost
it.
demanded. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. All right, 19 to 24.
Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. It is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power. Even now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. Therefore Daniel went in to Arioch, whom the king who had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and spoke to him as follows. Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me into the king's presence, and I will declare the interpretation to the king.
All right. Night vision, no goggles required. No night vision goggles?
No.
Okay. So how does God choose to reveal things through, especially to the Old Testament prophets? It seems like there were a kind of a wide variety of ways in which things were revealed to those prophets. In fact, I think the Hebrew writer says, God having of old times in many and various ways, or the old King James says diverse portions, or whatever, some weird phrase that we don't use today. And so there was a variety of ways, of a lot of different means by which God chose to reveal his will through the Old Testament prophets. But then the Hebrew writer goes on to say in these last days is revealed us through his Son. So God had a final revelation through his Son that surpassed all of those previous ways. So what does it mean that he had a night vision? Was he in a dreamlike state? Had he actually fallen asleep and had a vision in his own sleep? Did he have a dream about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, or did he dream the same dream as Nebuchadnezzar, that God told him, this is the dream I showed Nebuchadnezzar, and now you get to see a rerun of it? Or did he, was it a waking thing where it appeared as though, a movie on the wall? Or I don't know what that means, a night vision. And I don't know that we can understand exactly what that experience was that Daniel experienced. But it was a night vision, whatever that means, to whatever extent that tells us what happened. But the prayer that Daniel prays then, his prayer of thanksgiving and trust, is a noteworthy prayer. When you see the way that he responds to what God has done for him, it's not a thanksgiving that comes out of, it's not like, wow, God, I didn't think you could pull that off. Or, wow, God, I didn't really think you'd tell me what that was, but you did, and you saved my life, and I appreciate it. It was, God, I knew that you were going to come through for me. I knew that you had the power to do it. I knew that you could reveal it if you chose to do so, and I believed that you would choose to do so. You didn't put us in this position. You didn't put us here in this place to have us killed at the king's whim. You put us here to affect this situation. You put us here to influence the events that are going on around us, and we trusted that you would be able to reveal this to us and would reveal this to us so that we could play our part that you have put us here to play. And it just demonstrates a remarkable level of trust.
I keep thinking of, Esther. It's such a time as this, they were there for that reason.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's a remarkable view to have. So often I don't know that we ever find ourselves, in a situation like that where it's like, by my presence here, I can have an impact on this situation, whether it's a relationship with somebody, whether it's leading someone to the Lord, whether it's doing a good deed that has, those rippling effects that go out and bring glory to God's name in some way, or whatever it is. Do we ever approach a situation the way that Daniel and his friends approach it, with that attitude of, I know that something good can come of me being here, and I believe that I'm here so that I can do that good thing. It's a remarkable level of trust that they demonstrate.
Well, I added in the little bracket, the little dealie there on Jason's slide here, in trust, because, obviously we have Daniel praising God, and he has this vision, and we don't exactly know how that worked and what went on there, but we know for sure that Daniel was confident that this was a message from God, and this is what the message said. Now, could you put yourself in this situation, being like, God, thank you for giving me the answer, and you go before the king, and you say, God gave me this answer, and that's not the right answer? What would have happened then? His trust is, God has given me this. God is, and obviously, we have the same level of faith and trust in God, that God is truth. But Daniel putting his faith in a God, unlike, again, we talked about the wise men and the people putting their trust in a little g God, that, that they could make up whatever they wanted. And they had very little trust that this was true. So if all of that makes sense, that what he's saying is, at least what I was trying to say, is Daniel, when he receives this vision, he trusts, he knows this is truth. This is what I'm going to tell the good old King Nebi, and he's going to, give me that great benefit that he said, if you do this, but I mean, I think that Daniel was saying, I trust what God has told me in this vision. I trust that this is the correct thing. And he is thanking God before he validates that that's the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. I mean, he doesn't even necessarily know from King Nebuchadnezzar that this is the dream, that this was the interpretation. He knows that this is from God, and he believes that this is true.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that, the idea of going before the king and saying, King, I know your dream. Here it is. And the king said, that wasn't it at all. That was not my dream. I hadn't even thought of that level of faith that Daniel describes. That's a good way of putting it. I like Daniel's response in verse 24. The first thing Daniel does once he knows what the dream is and has said his prayer of thanksgiving, the first thing he says to Arioch is not, I've got my ticket to the top here, or I've got the thing that's going to convince the king that I'm the smartest man in all the realm. He says, don't kill anybody else. I don't know if they've already been killing everybody or if they're just rounding them up to kill them or whatever, but the first thing he says is, nobody else needs to die. Nobody needs to be put to death because we have the answer. And so the fact that that's his first response, I think says something about his character. Think of I don't know if it just happens in movies or if it happens in real life where people try to get to the top by eliminating their competition or whatever. But if you think about his opportunity here, let a few more of them die, and I move up the list, right? So that's not Daniel's approach at all. So it reveals something to us of who Daniel is.
Well, this is, again, this is pure speculation, but could some of these same men, again, it's 70-some years later when King Darius is in power in Daniel 6, but could some of these men be the same men in Daniel 6? They're going to say, hey, let's trap and kill Daniel for what he's doing. I mean, granted, they'd be pretty old with him, but his first inclination is spare these people. And I mean, they're the swindlers, they're the liars, they're the magicians. And it's almost like, well, the world would be a better place without them because they're just, whatever, we can justify or excuse away that, well, the world was a better place without them, and it's going to be a lot easier for me in the kingdom, in the kingdom, and a lot easier for the people of God in the kingdom. Again, because the next chapter, there's a fiery furnace, and again, some of these are the same men that are going to start making these plots to kill Daniel. And Daniel here is saying, don't kill these guys. Don't let this slaughter continue.
Yeah. How many of them would have spared Daniel's life had they had the answer and Daniel was next on the chopping block? Many of them would have allowed Daniel to die so that they could move up the list. But that's not who Daniel is. 25 to 30. Then Arioch hurriedly brought Daniel into the king's presence and spoke to him as follows. I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the king. The king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered before the king and said, as for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners were able to declare it to the king. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. As for you, O king, while on your bed, your thoughts turn to what would take place in the future, and he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me, more than in any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. There you go. Daniel's faith and confidence was infectious.
I put that on there, and I knew I'd have to jump in here for a second.
But, yeah, what do you mean by that?
Can you go back once, maybe one or two slides? One more. It was a long ways back there. So, but if you look at the first thing I underlined, this is Arioch. This is the guy that's supposed to kill all these people. And Arioch is coming back, and he is telling the king, again, you've just cursory reading this, you may not necessarily understand, but what he's kind of doing is he's saying, if Daniel is wrong, I'm putting myself in the position where the king is going to kill me too. He's saying, I've got this guy who can do this. The ESV will say will interpret. And so Arioch, this guy, I don't remember exactly what he's called, the king's captain. Arioch is saying, I found a man of the Jews who can make and I don't know if Arioch knows the dream. I don't know if Arioch has this validation where I know that Daniel knows and he's in the know and this is all going to go well. But Arioch is saying, I found the guy who can do it. And again, we know with good old Nebi, if Daniel's wrong, Nebi and Arioch has kind of put himself in the same ship. And so this faith that Daniel has of, I know what the dream was, and I know what's going to happen, and I know what's going to be great. Somehow, some way, and maybe this is, again, behind the scenes in the text, Arioch has a relationship of some kind, maybe with Daniel and his friends over the couple of years. But it's somewhere along the line, Arioch is kind of putting his head on the chopping block saying, Daniel can do it.
He doesn't go to the king and say, this fella here says he can do this. He takes him to the king and says he can do it. Yeah, Greg?
You know, it seems to me like Arioch's not in a big hurry to carry out the king's command. I mean, sometimes you would think he'd go out and do it the same day, but obviously days went by, and now he's excited that he doesn't have to, I think.
Yeah. So some of those wise men might have been his friends. Like for real.
So,
Oh, yeah.
You heard they took him in there, and
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of an indication that he wasn't real thrilled about doing, about carrying out this order of the king.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Johnny?
Well, this kind of reminds me of our story in Acts that we're talking about, where the story was changed a little, because he says, I found this guy. No, Daniel came to him.
Yeah.
In Acts, it's like, oh, well, I went down and saved Paul from all these Jews.
Yeah.
Little twist on the story there.
Yeah, there is maybe a little bit of inserting himself into, but he was also the one that was put in charge of rounding up all the wise men. So he kind of, I found Daniel, and I was going to kill him, but then he convinced me to let him have a day, and now I brought him to you. So yeah, so he does insert himself there maybe a little bit. Daniel does tell, where does it say that? Made known to you what will take place. I think maybe I got ahead with that one. Is that in the next section?
No, that's here. I also looked it up. Verse
Okay.
28.
28.
In the middle. At least for the ESV.
Oh, there it is. Okay, verse 28.
Or I guess
There it
the
is.
end for
Well, no, because I skip a verse. Or the verse
it in half,
continues
yeah.
continues on the next slide. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He's made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. It's interesting that this is something that we might read through and kind of just say, okay, and not really spend a lot of time on that. But then you start reading some commentaries or things people have written about it, and all of a sudden there's like pages and pages over this phrase. So in the latter days, well, what are we talking about? And so there's kind of some possibilities. Just quite frankly, it could mean just sometime after now. That would be later days, right? So in the latter days may just mean sometime from henceforth this will take place. There may be a special meaning of it having to do with kind of the end during the period of the end of the Jewish era. Many people get it into latter days as in days even yet seen for us, that we are not even there yet. That's not one that I'm comfortable with. And then there's one that puts it kind of into the Christian dispensation sometime through then. So considering, and we haven't got into the interpretation of the dream yet, but considering what the dream means and what kingdoms we're talking about, it's kind of a combination of those. It is in the days that follow. It's not, we're starting right now because Nebuchadnezzar himself is represented in the dream, but then there are future kingdoms that come that afterseed. What is afterseed? Succeed Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, and that come after his. So there are later days that are involved, and those persist on down through the end of the end of kind of the Jewish age and into the age of the church. And so it kind of is an amalgamation of all those ideas. In latter days, it just means days henceforth through the end of the Jewish period and into the final dispensation of time after the cross. So when are the latter days? Well, they were then, and they've kind of already been, some of them, and some of them are right now, and we're there. We're in the latter days. And we can look at some other passages. There were, if you look at it was Isaiah 2, verses 2 through 4, Micah 4, 1 through 4, in the book of Joel 2, verse 28, Peter ends up quoting that passage in Acts chapter 2, and then in Acts chapter 3 says, these days are now. So, I mean, there's a continuation of those things. So latter days is days after the days of Daniel, but it's also a specific set of time that begins, or at least comes to a fullness during the age of the church. Jesus in Mark 1, verse 15, I think that one would be maybe a good one to read. And I may be jumping the gun on this one, but this will apply later as well. Jesus says in Mark 1:15, the time is fulfilled and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel. So the time is fulfilled. Well, how does that relate to what we're looking at? We're going to see the interpretation of the dream in just a minute, and we're going to see the kind of that final culmination of the way the dream ends with the rock that's been cut without hands, and how it destroys the kingdoms that are represented by the statue. So the time is fulfilled, meaning that the time is here now. The kingdom of God is at hand. That kingdom that God has predicted through Daniel is on its way. It's coming into fruition during the age of Jesus. And so that's what Daniel is making reference to with the latter days through those things. I'm not sure if I cleared anything up or made it all as muddy as I feel like I made it.
It's not him, it's God.
Right.
God is saying this.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel shows remarkable humility. I mean, think of how any one of those other wise men that the king has been asking would have replied or would have responded had they had an inkling of what the dream was. They would have been using that to leverage their own position. Daniel, as a wise man, goes into the king and says, it's not because I'm wise. This has nothing to do with my wisdom. It has nothing to do with my ability. It has nothing to do with who I am. This is only because I serve the God who can reveal these things. And so, I mean, it's just a remarkable position for Daniel to put himself into, where he is saying, this isn't about me.
The way he says that, that the thought that the king, there in verse 30, that you may understand the thoughts of your mind.
Yeah.
He's, to me, that shows compassion for what the king is going through.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
You're having these anxious thoughts or whatever, and, this lets you know that to help you out.
I think that's a good point, and it is, the way Daniel addresses the king through this whole thing is remarkable as well. So it shows nothing but respect for the king. Greg?
Just, the thing I love about Daniel is this very endearing picture of him that we're seeing early on. It's humble, it's wise, it's faithful, is the consistent pattern throughout the whole book of Daniel.
Right.
He's one of, I guess, in my mind, the best example of faithfulness in the Old Testament.
I fully agree. I think Daniel is I wish the book of Daniel was longer. It told us more about him, because he does have a lot of, his whole book is a book of highlights. It's a highlight reel, one after the other. Well,
Before we go, I wanted to say
In
this
the latter
very
days
briefly.
before the
In-
bell
In the
rings.
latter days after the bell rang. You're going before the king, and the king's killing, well, he's either going to kill, or he has been killing, or he's about to kill a bunch of people. And he wants you to interpret a dream, and this was Daniel's great humility. Daniel comes before him, and he says this, nobody, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, astrologers, nobody can show the king the mystery that he has asked. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm Daniel, but first I would say, I've got something for you. It's from God. But no, he starts off with, nobody can do it. And I just thought that was funny that he starts off with,
yeah.
funny enough, nobody can do it. And I didn't know if I was in that situation, I would be afraid that I wouldn't make it to the second half. Oh, nobody can, okay, it's like, but no, Daniel, God allows him to make it to that second half. And again, yeah, he's humbly saying, God did it, I didn't do nothing. But he starts
Yeah.
off kind of rough, I guess, for a king that's pretty easily off with their heady. But anyways,
I like it.
so see you next week.
Well, look at there. I'm back, and we didn't get through a whole chapter. All right. So it is a long chapter. All right. All right. We'll pick up in verse 31 next week.
Well, I only made 21 verses, and this was